Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with my review for 2018's most anticipated exclusive, Spider-Man on the PS4. A gigantic thank you to PlayStation for providing me with a copy well ahead of launch. To tell the truth, I've said to myself at least 40 times this week, I can't believe I already have this game on my PS4. Spider-Man hasn't historically struggled as bad as other superheroes have with video games, but it's been a while since we've received a good one. Now normally I enjoy building suspense in my reviews, but I'm going to outright say it this time. Insomniac Games Spider-Man is the best video game representing our web-headed friend yet. It is a culmination of the greatest aspects of Spider-Man games from the last 2 decades. A personal tale that made me care about the man behind the mask and those connected to him. Creative, fluid gameplay, and a testament to how truly awe-inspiring superhero games can be if the developers are left off the leash. I will explain to you how without spoiling anything, and I will also do my best to hide all the Spider-Man suits that you unlock, only showing those revealed prior to launch. Now, let's take a free-falling dive off the Avengers Tower into the story. The game springboards into action with a clip that feels very reminiscent of the opening of any Spider-Man movie. After seeing a bunch of references and setting the tone with the polarization that is one of the greatest superheroes, but also someone incredibly clumsy and messy, in the first 30 seconds, I instantly knew this series was in capable hands. If Insomniac's catalog of excellent titles beforehand really wasn't enough to do the trick. Wilson Fisk has been arrested, and there is now a power vacuum in New York City, leading to the rise of the Demons, who is head up by Martin Lee. Mr. Negative's first appearance was in a Spider-Man comic from July of 2007. Not only is he a relatively new nemesis in the scheme of things, but also a mysterious, complex foe that has true, believable motivations as the narrative slowly unravels before you. Trying to figure out how other villains throughout the game connect to this made for an intriguing foray. Admittedly, there were some narrative beats that I found a tad predictable, but in the grand scheme, it didn't detract from the story. The key to the lack of that detraction was that there was always something much bigger waiting in the shadows to surprise me. The twist in this tale compared to other Spider-Man games is that Peter's life outside of the suit is truly what sets it apart, allowing you to establish an emotional tie to the people he holds close. And no, I am actually not talking about visiting J. Jonah Jameson for Daily Bugle missions like in Spider-Man 2. The reason this is such a great design choice is because it feeds off gaming being an interactive medium. Talking to people of importance, being able to pick up objects in the Spider-Man universe and examine them for background info, and simply a general breakaway from the gameplay and the costume to explore a new way. Being Spider-Man is a blast, but Insomniac understands the duality that truly makes the hero shine by hammering home not only the wisecracking hero side that so many developers in the past have hyper-focused on, but also the quirky, awkward young adult that is Peter Parker. Furthermore, Mary Jane feels more important to this game than ever. She is not just this damsel in distress or a romantic setup to make a check off another trope. The relationship between these two is palpable, feeling like they're on cracked eggshells. It doesn't lean on the laurels of its comic and movie counterparts, where a lot would assume, oh, it's MJ and Parker, I'm sure they're happily in love. If you couldn't tell, this is a character-driven tale, and far from traditional when we look at our other superhero stories. It's not about having 1,000,001 villains and cameos. Insomniac Games wanted to tell a story here, and they did a damn good job. I want to emphasize one thing that is common throughout the entire review. There is often a disparagement when it comes to storytelling in superhero video games. Oh, it's a good superhero story, but it's not a good story. That's a giant negative without the mister in this case. This is a story that gradually introduces characters at a smart pace, develops relationships, and then feeds off of them later on to land impactful moments that will ripple throughout the story and gamers' hearts. Yes, it does help if you care about Spider-Man, but it's not only the characters, it's New York City having its own personality. As a lifelong resident, can I just say, finally, someone gets it. I have seen so many attempts at making NYC the setting for a game, and it's always so boring, as it consists of broad strokes of buildings with some landmarks like Madison Square Garden or Grand Central Terminal. New York City is one of the most diverse places in the world, not only culturally, but also aesthetically. Harlem, Midtown, Hell's Kitchen, and so on all have a different look and feel, and Insomniac got that. Couple that in with some Marvel Easter eggs like the Avengers Tower, the Sanctum Sanctorium, and you have a true New York City for Spider-Man to explore. Now, Jameson also has a show called Just the Facts that plays after almost any single event that's completed, whether it's a main story or a side mission, accounting for your actions. Oddly enough, I didn't expect this, but it really reminded me of Fallout 3, and I unapologetically adored it. For those who don't like having Jonah peppered all over their actions, you can actually turn it off in the settings menu by unsubscribing. Lastly, there is a rip-roaring final act, and need I say more? Let's just web swing on in from here to the gameplay. Now, I want to get my 4 complaints in that I have about the gameplay so I can really dive into the meat and potatoes of why this gameplay system is superb. Number 1, this camera is built for big, expansive spaces without objects getting in the way. But the second, things start to get tight, it's relatively cumbersome to work around. It's a free-floating camera, it doesn't just sit above the action, you control it. It's not a consistent issue, but it popped up enough that it does have to be pointed out, and it will be frustrating. Number 2, another frustrating issue. This game loves its QuickTime events. It's not used as a substitute for uninspired boss design, but normally as a finisher to epic moments, like trying to put an exclamation point on a boss fight, but it's only a period. Now, I didn't hate it, but I would have rather they just let the scene roll, as it can break the flow the game has. So if you hate QuickTime events, this game does have a decent amount. Number 3, I've been told it's not as bad on HDR televisions, but throughout my experience on just a normal 48-inch HD TV, the game does not look as good at night. It looks kind of muddy, actually. The light really helps bring in the color, which also brings with it reflections, highlights on the suit, a lot of color as well, which really aids the visual design, and that leads to a fairly apparent difference. However, those reflections that you're going to be seeing aren't exactly what's happening in the city behind you. They're kind of still images placed there. As you can see here, there's like a rooftop with a pool and there's a bunch of streets, and when I turn around, none of that's there. Now, I'm not a huge graphics guy, so I still found the world during the day and sunset especially beautiful to look at. In the terms of downgrading, I admittedly struggled to pick up on this kind of stuff. The photos circling the internet do highlight a difference that is there, but I was playing the game before these photos had popped out. But I genuinely have to say, I thought it was a damn good looking game beforehand. I saw the photos, I went back, I played it, and I still have to say it is a very attractive title. Nonetheless, if there is a difference and you do feel like it's there and it's very apparent, then I leave the decision in your very capable hands on whether or not you should be interested in that if that is your thing. Lastly, number 4 is that they created a frequency matching minigame very similar to the cryptographic sequencer from the Arkham series, and since comparisons will likely be made between these two series, I didn't find this to be the smartest design decision. Now, I didn't find any of these game breakers, so don't sweat it too hard, but you should be aware of them going in. As for the good stuff, where do I even begin? I think it's with the feel of Spider-Man and smooth controls. Square will be your basic attack, and triangle attaches a web to an enemy where you will yank yourself to them. Instantaneously, Spider-Man has a feel of his own as you're able to cover large stretches of area, continuing combos, and still feeling slick while doing it. Now, another key component is that Spider-Man doesn't counter, he dodges. Often these superhero games are out there trying to replicate Rocksteady instead of being original with a creation of their own, but that isn't the case here. Unlike in the Arkham series, where thugs form a circle around you and allow you to live the power fantasy of playing whack-a-mole with their faces, foes in Spider-Man will go where it makes sense. Not that Arkham didn't, but in this case, enemies holding rocket launchers or guns are going to stay up high or away from the action. Other enemies with shields, weapons, or the large and yet very quick brutes will stay up in your face, forcing you to be on your toes, yet trying to avoid all the shots coming in. Spidey is agile, he is fast, but cannot take a beating. All it really takes is a few good hits and your health is low. Now, you can build up a focus meter, which I'll get into in a little bit, which allows you to regen health, but you can die pretty quickly. The way you work around this, in a way, is by excelling in aerial combat, where the aforementioned brutes, shields, and weapons cannot reach you. By holding the square button, you can perform a launcher, which pops enemies up above you. Combine that with aerial dodges, web yanks to pull more enemies up to you, and you'll be a free-floating master in no time. As you beat bad guy butt, you do gain the focus that I was just talking about, which can be used to perform finishers by pressing triangle and circle at the same time. The icing on the cake is the Spider-Man gadgets. even at the point where I'm at close to 100% completion and about 25 hours in with this game. Dear Lord, I'm still figuring out new combinations. Using trip mines to pull a guy with a gun into a brute who is now stunned and then I can take it to his face. Or how about using a web bomb, webbing up 6 enemies at once, then using a concussion blast that's fully upgraded to fire all of them off their feet into the wall, and then they're stuck there and cannot partake in the rest of the battle. As a die-hard Spider-Man fan, I always said the key to making him truly feel like the hero he is, and also unique in the video game sphere, is by embracing his scientific side, on top of having smooth movement, which this game nails. The combat system rewards experimentation and creativity, leading to it being consistently fun. There's also the movement that reminds me of the very underrated Sunset Overdrive, where mechanics are added over time to help you maintain locomotion throughout any environment at any height. Yes, even in Central Park, where it's tough to web swing. There is also an enticing gameplay loop that needs its own set of props. As you explore the city, you will find towers, which, yes, I know, they're back, and I thought this was a trope that was gone, but I guess not. Insomniac's bringing it back strong. Anyway, as you unlock these towers, you find all these activities on the district on your map, like hideouts, which are pretty much horde modes, research stations ran by Harry Osborn that serve as unique missions based around subjects like bettering the environment, wildlife, plumbing, etc., backpacks, landmarks, crimes, challenges, and more. Each of these side activities have their own tokens. By this, I mean that if you complete a crime, you get a crime token, and then there are bonus objectives tied to it to earn bonus tokens. If you complete a research station mission, then you get a research token, and so on. Now, these tokens can be flipped for the array of sexy, sleek Spider-Man suits available. Each suit has a unique power, and you can mix and match them to your heart's desire. So pretty much, let's say you like the Scarlet Spider-Man costume, but you want to use the Web Blossom ability from the advanced suit. You can do just that, and mixing and matching is key because we're able to look good and kick bad guy butt at the same time. Gamers can also cash in these tokens for upgrades to the swath of gadgets I described earlier and suit mods. Now, suit mods are another layer on this spider cake, as you can do things like simply letting focus build up more in aerial combat to more complex ideas like letting lightning build on your fist based off how long you're battling in the air for, and then when you come down, doing some really devastating damage that chains to enemies. Another reward you have for engaging in all these missions is experience, which allows you to level up to a max of 50 where your health, melee power, and swing speed will increase. Upon leveling up, the player will earn a perk point which they can spend in one of 3 trees that are Innovator, Defender, and Web Slinger. Now, each tree gradually expands the options you have during combat, makes things a lot easier because the game does get a little bit tough, in my opinion, in the late goings where they send some really diverse enemy types at you in a pretty big group. But it also makes traversing New York City from point A to point B even more enjoyable. Now, you can level past 50, but you only receive 1 health point and 1% increase for either melee damage or swing speed, so it's not a huge difference. All this packaged together, and it's hard for me to remember the last game that I was riddled with excitement every single time I leveled up to see what suit I unlocked and what I could upgrade. With all these activities in the gameplay loop, I found myself realizing that this game is a case study on all that is right with Spider-Man games put together. It avoids the monotony of prior games like repetitive, uninspired missions and endless crime. Remember that god-awful system Beanox made in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 where people would shoot at you if you didn't just stop a simple crime? Yeah. Awful times, not here, thank goodness. However, it does draw on what was done right. I recalled the times of putting in cheat codes on Spider-Man PS4 and being marveled at all the different costumes that were there, or the simple fun of just being Spider-Man, like in Spider-Man 2 on the original Xbox, where I loved swinging, gaining momentum, and doing aerial tricks. Yes, Spider-Man PS4 even has tricks you can do in the air to earn some bonus XP. Threw me back, man. I think back to the Shocker boss fight in the subway tunnels of Spider-Man 1 based off the movie versus the open world city chase with Shocker in this Spider-Man. It made me realize how far we've come as gamers and how unique this experience truly is. It stands well on its own, but it's still something that shows how far we've really come. I just remember sitting on my floor endlessly grinding Spider-Man 2 just because it was fun, and this game has me doing the same exact thing. Now, while being Spider-Man is phantasmic, a breakaway every now and then really aids the pacing as well as keeping things fresh. As I mentioned earlier, playing as Peter Parker and investigating was fun, but he also has a series of light puzzle science-focused mini-games. One involves rewiring the voltage to match the amount listed on top. It was very reminiscent of BioShock's hacking, except that this one didn't have a timer attached to it. The other science minigame is based on matching patterns to identify strands of DNA or various chemicals Peter interacts with. We really need to talk about MJ too. Her segments of gameplay are stealth focused, giving the player a dosage of vulnerability that if these henchmen catch MJ, she's as good as gone. Now that can be frustrating for those that struggle with stealth in games, because if you do get caught, it's game over. Fortunately, there is a very forgiving checkpoint system, so I never became frustrated, and quite honestly, I didn't fail that much to really even desperately need it. Also, there is a segment where Peter and Mary Jane work together, and it is hands down one of the best experiences I've had in a superhero title. I just thought it was so cool, man. More importantly though, is that these parts don't feel forced, and let me tell you why that's important. Spider-Man is an amazing hero, but he's one guy. He can only cover so much ground, and that goes for really any superhero game. No matter how great they are, they can only be in one place at one time, and that's why we see stories in hero games go at such an accelerated pace, leaving various plot holes in their trail. The usage of MJ allows not only for a change up in gameplay, but for other strains of the narrative to continue without having Spidey Boy there. It's intelligent design and works exceedingly well. It's modern. It's not just all about Spider-Man, it's about the characters that surround him, like a lot of games do nowadays. Now after that mouthful, it's time to move on to the last bit of our review with the audio.
So you guys were in bed with Fisk all along? Oh no, I'll never get that image out of my head.
Alright, so it's not a secret that Yuri Lowenthal is my favorite voice actor of all time. He won my heart as a kid when he voiced Sasuke Uchiha, and ever since then, I couldn't get enough of those shouts of aggression, the anime grunts, and his just very flexible voice. Admittedly, this is the part of the review where there's a bit of bias on the voice part, because I genuinely believe that Yuri is the best voice for Spider-Man. It works on moments that have to be touching, funny, awkward, sad, and so on. It fits unbelievably well in every regard. I also love Insomniac's attention to detail, adding minor grunts to the audio whenever Spider-Man was talking while web swinging versus when he's standing still. It's a standout level of effort that I hope a lot of people do catch on to. Now, while Yuri is the star, don't let that take away from Laura Bailey's role as Mary Jane. For those of you out there who are like me and love Persona 4 with all your heart, you may understand immediately why Yuri and Laura have such great chemistry together. Also, Stephen Oyoung kills it as Martin Lee, considering he's able to elevate scenes with a level of emotion I found quite unpredictable. Aside from the voices, the score in the game is just downright epic. Hearing the music pick up and the choir jump in as I begin web swinging, it fills you with all the power and confidence in the world. The impact of punches sounding entirely different based off the area you're in. The heaps of additional dialogue for quite literally every action in the game. It's all there. You see that this is what happens when a developer loves what they're working on, are wholeheartedly passionate about it, and are given the money and time to do so. Now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to close out this review. Here is my verdict. Now, if it was hard to tell by my borderline overwhelming reverence for this game, this is a must buy if you own a PS4. It's not just an amazing superhero game, but a damn good title on its own merits. It doesn't lean heavily on nostalgia, but builds off of it to create new memories and moments for gamers. I know for a fact that this is a game, much like Spider-Man 2 or Ultimate Spider-Man, that I'll look back on as I get older and remember all the little details about where I was, how my life was, and so on, reflecting on this wondrous title. The story I found captivating, albeit a tad predictable at times. The gameplay stands out and makes me feel like Spider-Man, and the acting slams in some of the most powerful moments for Peter. Hats off to Insomniac Games. I never doubted them, but I'm so happy to add Spider-Man to the list of IPs like Ratchet & Clank and Sunset Overdrive from them that I am obsessed with. I hope you all enjoyed my review and found it quite informative. If there are any questions you have, please sound off in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.